Portland, Oregon, a city full of bridges, bikes, breweries, and coffee. Also, a city full of cartoons, cartoon artists, major comic publishers, and indie comic creators, animation studios, writers, illustrators, artists, comic book shops, and even university programs. What we don't have yet is a way to celebrate all this talent. So we ask you to help us launch the Northwest Museum of Cartoon Arts. Hi, I'm Mike Rosen, the board chair for Northwest MoCA, and we've been dreaming, planning, pitching, and developing this idea for 2 years. And with your help, we can raise $75,000 to make this dream a reality. With your support, we will create a pop-up exhibit in September to bring the cartoon arts community together and shine a spotlight on the diverse talent of the Pacific Northwest. This is a one-of-a-kind project, and we're offering exciting rewards for your help. Museum visits, memberships, t-shirts, signed comic strips, limited edition prints, original art, tote bags filled to the brim with goodies, rare comics, and much more. Support us and be part of a movement to build a lasting monument to the power of the cartoon arts to entertain, educate, and bring joy to fans worldwide. Thank you for your support.
All right, welcome back to this episode of the Comics Multiverse. My name is Chad, and my guest today is Michael Rosen. He is working with the Northwestern Museum of Comic Arts. If you've seen any of the interviews I did with Mark Russell, either here or over on the Comic Watch channel, I know we've mentioned it because I know Mark has been involved with the group, and he introduced me to Michael, and they are currently running a Kickstarter. So I thought it'd be great to bring him on and find out about it from him. So let me bring him in and let's get this ball rolling.
Hi, Chad. Thanks for the time.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to us. Before we get started about talking about the museum and the Kickstarter, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey with comics.
So I've been a big fan for years. I collect comics. I read comics. I go to comic conventions. And I'm retired. I'm a retired environmental engineer. But about 10 years ago, I worked on a project on the Deepwater Horizon Gulf Coast oil spill. And I worked with Shannon Wheeler and Steve Dean to create a graphic novel about that, Oil and Water, and I edited it. I've also worked on 3 COVID comics with Shannon Wheeler. One was fighting COVID, one was beating COVID, and the other one was living with COVID. And they were sponsored by the Oregon Health Authority. And so I helped write and edit those with Shannon, and we distributed over 300,000 of those to nonprofits and doctors and individuals. So I've kind of dabbled in it a little as an editor, but mostly I'm a comics fan.
So, what do you remember? Maybe the first comic you read, or maybe the one that kind of hooked you into the hobby?
Probably Spider-Man, and probably around early 1970s. So, and that time you would go to a newsstand, and I would go to a newsstand at a local candy store. And I remember, like, one thing I remember particularly was Avengers versus Defenders crossover. And I waited, like, I remember getting to the comic book store waiting for that to be put on the rack so I could buy it. And so I was really a big fan for several years. Then I kind of fell out. I kind of stopped reading comics when I was in my early teens. But then in the early 90s, I passed by a comic book store with my niece. And I went in, she wanted to go inside, and I went inside, and it just blew me away how comics had changed and how interesting they were. And then I fell right back into it.
And how did you get involved with the museum?
So the Northwest Museum of Cartoon Arts was a concept that grew out of an exhibit at the Oregon Historical Society about 7 years ago. It was called From Geek to Chic, and it was curated by two cartoonist writers from Portland, Anina Bennett and Paul Guinan. And I guess I didn't get to go to the exhibit. I didn't know about it. But about 3 years ago, there was a memory that popped up on, I think, Paul or Anina's Facebook page, talking about their good memories of the exhibit. And then a lot of people chimed in and said, wow, we really need a museum in Portland. And so it kind of grew and snowballed from there. And so I kind of ran with it. I put together a board and a mission statement and goals. And we've been working on it for about 2.5 years now.
And so, kind of explain what the concept of the museum is.
Well, I can tell you the mission statement. It's to create a vibrant and living space that is accessible to all and celebrates the history, influence, diversity, and joy of all aspects of cartoon art. And we value celebrating the diversity of the art and artists, creating opportunities for the next generation, literacy and young adult education, Pacific Northwest origins, and higher education. And the concept is that there's so much cartoon arts activity in the Pacific Northwest. We have 2 university comic studies programs. We have a ton of shops. I mean, an incredible amount of artists and writers in the Pacific Northwest, particularly in Oregon and somewhat in Portland. We have 3 major publishers, Dark Horse, Oni, and Image. We have animation studios like Leica. We have a really big comics art studio. That's probably the biggest one in the Pacific Northwest, if not the country, called Helioscope. And so it just seems like there's a rich history, and I'm not going to go through it in detail, but there's a rich history of comic arts in the Pacific Northwest. So it seems like, time to acknowledge that and celebrate it.
And I know Mark Russell has been involved in it. What other, I guess, creators that people would know or recognize are you working with or is helping?
Well, Mark is our vice chair of our board. And we have a really diverse board. The other cartoonist writer on the board is Shannon Wheeler, but we have artists and writers on the board, shop owners, collectors, academics and librarians, nonprofit administrators, and legal. Some of the board credentials include a National Book Award winner, Eisner Award winner for writing, Eisner Award winner for Comic Shop, internationally recognized comics exhibit curator, and that's Ben Saunders from the University of Oregon, who curated the Marvel exhibit, which is actually traveling around the world right now. So there's just a lot of diversity on the board, and most of the people have some direct link to, except for a few. I'd say everyone except one person is directly involved in comics, either as a collector or a shop owner or somebody who's produced a comic or a graphic novel.
And so obviously you're running a Kickstarter. What is the goal of the Kickstarter, and what do you plan to hopefully hope to fund with it?
Yeah, so the goal is to create the first museum exhibit as a pop-up exhibit in somewhere in the Portland area. And our thinking is that if we can show there's community support to fund the project, if there's demand in the community to attend the exhibit, and that we can actually operate the exhibit, then we can show that we're a viable organization and pursue major grant funding, individual and corporate sponsorships. And so to get a little bit into the details, the exhibit would cost about $75,000, and it's called Foundations of Pacific Northwest Cartooning. And it'll focus on Pacific Northwest cartoonists. But, the costs are rent, curation, framing, and paying for personnel. Those are the really big costs of the exhibit. So it's really to put on our first exhibit. And it's a $75,000 campaign.
Now, for the campaign, what are you offering as, for backers?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that we're offering. The one thing is we have a original never before seen Hellboy print that Mike Mignola did for us. We have rare comics pages from artists like Stephen Bissett and Brian Talbot, museum visits and memberships, sweatshirts, stickers, pins, kind of the usual stuff. Tote bags. We have signed scripts from people like Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Russell. We have limited edition prints that are signed by people like Stan Lee, George Perez, Charles Vess, Matt Wagner. So of a large variety of rewards that are all related to comics in some way.
Is there, any, I guess, creator that's, creator is, I guess, centered or maybe from the Northwest part of the, the area that, maybe would like to work with or hope to get involved with the project?
Well, one of the things we're going to focus on in the exhibit is Helioscope Studios artists. Probably the most famous artist and writer from Helioscope is Steve Lieber. We'd love, we know we'll work with people like Matt Wagner, Shannon Wheeler, Mike and Laura Allred. Those are some of the big artists and writers. Mark Russell in the Pacific Northwest. But we hope that at some point, it's not just going to be, the museum isn't always going to be a Pacific Northwest focus. We want to have exhibits that are representative of the cartoon arts, throughout the country. So.
Okay. And once assuming the campaign funds, how long do you guys have a plan for how long it'll take you to kind of get everything in motion to, once you have secured the funds?
Right. Yeah. We figure that it will take us, about 4 months, and that we would start the exhibit in October and run it through December of 2024.
Nice. So kind of going off, from the Kickstarter, who, personally for you, who would you put on if you had to choose a Mount Rushmore comic book Hall of Fame, who would you put on your personal one?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. So you're asking who I would put in the Hall of Fame. There's the usual suspects like Jack Kirby, Stan Lee. I was really into Vertigo when it was Vertigo. So Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore. I love the work that Brian Talbot does. He's from England. I love Matt Wagner's work, who's in Portland. He did Grendel. Gosh, you know, a lot of the artists from the 80s. So there would be a lot of people that would be on my list.
So have you ever thought about, dipping into maybe writing writing comics or something like that?
No, I'm strictly a fan and observer. I mean, like I said, I did a couple of things that were fun, but I'm definitely not an artist. I'm definitely not a writer, but I love hanging out with them and celebrating their work.
Yeah, definitely. So, um, what do you want people, well, once this is funded, what do you want people who see this, what do you want them to walk away from their experience with?
I want them to really appreciate comics and cartoon arts as a legitimate art form and really see the beauty of the merging of words and pictures, and create an interest for them to participate in the art, whether they're graphic novels or comic books or animation or manga. But I want them to really understand that it's not that it's a real phenomenon and a real art form, and that they appreciate it.
So, is there anything else that you would want people to know about, the museum, the crowdfunding campaign?
Well, just that I think they would get a really good feel for the museum and the project if they visited our website, which is nwmoca.org. So it's northwestmoca.org. And you can, right on the front page, you can go to our Kickstarter project page and read more about the project and decide if you want to invest in it. So I would encourage people to do that, to find out some more about what we're doing.
Now, is this your first experience with the Kickstarter platform?
Yes. Yes. I mean, aside from being somebody who's backed Kickstarter projects, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a really interesting machine. Some of it's complicated, some of it's really easy, but it's pretty interesting.
Well, what do you know when you're looking at the different Kickstarter campaigns? What are the ones that kind of catch your attention, and or what caught your attention for the ones that you've supported?
Most of the ones I've supported are writers and artists funding their own project. Like I supported a Mark Russell campaign for his first cartoon book. I've supported writers like Jeff Parker who want to create their own character on their own timeline and under their full control. Others like Carl Kessel. So it has mostly been comics related.
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not like let's produce this great gadget and invest in that. It's more
Right.
like let's produce some art and get it out in the community.
So, are you currently reading anything that you would recommend or think that people should, give a try?
Um, I read a lot of graphic novels, and lately I'm looking at my stack. Lately, I've been reading more historic stuff. Like there's a really good one, The Black Panther Party by David Walker.
Oh yeah, I know the artist on that. I know the artist. He lives in where I live. So
Oh, okay, cool. Um, I like Daniel Clowes, and I just read Monica.
mhm.
Um, I want to go back and read Eight Ball. I haven't read that before, or Black Hole. Um, I've got Palestine on my stack, which is obviously pretty timely right now, by Joe Sacco. I've read a lot of Joe Sacco, which is comics journalism. And then I read some fun stuff, collections. Like I've been into lately Tom King stuff, like his collections. He's done a lot of DC, like reinterpretations, or I want to like superheroes in the real life mode has been really interesting. Like Miracle Man, Human Target. He's working on Wonder Woman. My all-time favorite comic is Hellblazer and the character John Constantine, and they just started him. They finished their run. I can't remember how many hundreds it was, and then they kind of like commercialized him and took him out of his element into the regular DC universe, which I didn't like. But now it's back to the traditional Hellblazer type stories. I'm really into that. I love that stuff.
Cool. So, as we kind of wrap up here, would you like to, give a pitch for the Kickstarter and where people can find more information? I know you mentioned the website, but mention once more where people can find information about the museum and
Well,
anything.
yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity. Well, I think the museum will have an impact nationwide. We could use another cartoon art museum, especially in the Pacific Northwest. There are only a few in the country, kind of spread out. And I think, they'll see some. I think people, if they go to the website and they just quickly look around and they go to the Kickstarter campaign and see our pitch, they'll get excited as we are about this project, hopefully, and look at the rewards and say, hey, this is a really cool thing. I want to help build it, be in on the ground floor. So I would just encourage people to take our Kickstarter video is 90 seconds. So take a minute and a half and look at that. And hopefully it'll motivate you to want to invest in our project.
Well, definitely, I think, I've looked at the project, and just to hear you and Mark talk about it, it sounds like it's a very worthwhile project, and and hope
Thank
you
you.
guys are able to reach your goals and be able to bring this to the general public.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I really appreciate your interest in the project and taking the time to interview me.
Well, definitely, I'll definitely get this video out there, and we'll follow up as things go along, and maybe after the campaign we can touch base again and see how things went and see what
That'd be great.
plans you guys have.
Yeah, that would be great, Chad.
All right, well, thanks and have a great evening.
You too. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.